Welcome to the training on occupational health, environment and safety. Let us learn the module on first aid for electric shock. Before we begin, let's take a look at the key learning objectives. After completing this module, you will be able to define electric shocks and how it is caused, demonstrate how to respond to a person experiencing electric shock and give him first aid, explain how to prevent an electric shock. Let us find out what an electric shock is. An electric shock occurs when an electric current flows through the body. A slight harmless shock produces only a jarring or startling sensation. Severe shocks produce muscle contractions which lead to muscular cramps, the loss of the ability to move, unconsciousness or death. Severity of their shock depends on path of current, amount and type of current, duration of exposure, high voltage. Now let us see who are more prone to electric shocks. Electric shocks are common in infants and young children when they play with electrical appliances or cords, put any metal in the mouth, put their fingers in sockets. In older children, by mischievous exploration of electrical systems, or the use of faulty electrical appliances or tools. People who try to repair electrical connections without proper precautions. Electric shock is caused by ungrounded electrical equipment, by using electrical equipment while in contact with water or by being struck by lightning, touching a high voltage more than 1000 volts source, such as high tension wires that fall during a storm, touching someone who is still touching a live current, touching a low voltage, less than 1000 volts, current source, such as an electric socket or worn cord. Now let's see what the immediate actions are to be taken for an electric shock. Turn off the source of electricity if possible. Do not touch the victim. If you are barefoot, stand on wood or paper. Separate him from the electrical source using wood or any non-conductor object. Check to see if he is breathing. Is not breathing, administer CPR immediately. Check for any injuries. Call for medical emergency if required. If a person has got an electric shock, we need to call medical emergency immediately if any of these signs or symptoms occur. Unresponsiveness, no breathing, no pulse. Any discoloration of the skin, for example blue or dark skin. Muscle pain and contractions, burns, seizures, numbness and tingling, unconsciousness.
The electric shock. We use a number of electric gadgets in our houses. While using them, we may get a shock owing to some defect in the power supply, or because of our carelessness, we may get an electric shock. We may also get an electric shock if we use loose switches or wires without insulation. The dangers of an electric shock. When electricity passes through our body, we get an electric shock. Our body parts undergo a certain suffering. This is called an electric shock. If the force of electric currents is less, it will push the body away. If the force is more, the body gets attached to wire or the appliance used. First aid for an electric shock. If any person receives a shock, the main switch of the power supply must be switched off. If the victim gets attached to the wire or the appliance, do not touch him. But he must be separated from electricity using a dry stick. If you find that the victim has difficulty to take breath, give him artificial respiration through the nose or blow air through the victim's mouth by closing the nose. Then place him in the open air to let him rest. Take the victim to the doctor as early as possible. Let us be away from any kind of electric shock. Do not operate electric appliances with wet hands. You must not operate switches with wet fingers. You must wear your footwear while making electric connections. Always use a tester. Use a new wire instead of joining two old pieces of wires. We must not touch hanging electric wires. We must not dry clothes on electric wires. Lying fuses and repairing electrical appliances, etc. must be done only after switching off the power supply. If you observe smoke or spark from a switch, mend it or replace it with a new one. You should not put your fingers or metal rods in plugs or switches. We must be very careful while using an electric iron.
Now let us see how we can prevent electric shocks. Cover sockets and outlets. Install ground fault circuit interrupter GFCI outlets and adapters. Store and use electric devices away from water. Replace electrical equipment that is worn or damaged.
Hi, in this video, we will take a look at some useful tips to prevent electrical shock. Remember, when using any electrical equipment, safety is our first priority. Be slow and careful while using electrical equipment. Shut off the power for all circuits before working on any appliance. Never use an aluminum ladder. Use wooden ladders instead. And do not work with equipment that is wet. Water can increase the risk of shocks. If you have to work with wet equipment, then use rubber gloves or boots. Any equipment that is worn or damaged must be replaced. These 6 tips will help you reduce the risk of electric shocks. Safety first. Slow and careful. Shut off power. No metal ladders. Avoid water. And replace damaged appliances. Remember these and be safe.
Created using Powtoon.